be depressing.
What do you love about running?
Energy! It can be uplifting. That human connection that we create on the broadcast every night is incredibly important.
If it's important to our nation,
I wonder how you think about where America is at this moment.
it's on Face the Nation.
Can there be stability if Vladimir Putin remains in power?
Face the Nation with Margaret Brennan.
Documents with classified markings have been found in the Indiana home of former Vice President Mike Pence.
Clearly, we've got a problem here. Maybe we're overclassifying things. That may be part of the problem.
I know no man with higher integrity than Mike Pence, and I'm sure that he handled all of this in the proper way.
Monday's mass shooting targeted 2 agricultural businesses in Half Moon Bay.
This is a devastating tragedy for this community.
You know, for 10 years, we had an assault weapons ban in the United States, and you saw the number of shootings go way down.
Welcome to Red and Blue. I'm Weijia Jiang in Washington. Thank you for joining us. Documents with classified markings have been found in former Vice President Mike Pence's Indiana home. Pence's lawyer told the National Archives that the materials were discovered last week and handed over to the FBI. Sources tell CBS News that one of Pence's longtime aides found the documents. This comes as a special counsel prepares to investigate the classified materials found at President Biden's home and in his former private office. At the White House press briefing today, my colleague Nancy Cordes asked about the Pence documents.
Was the White House aware before this afternoon that classified documents had been found at Vice President Pence's residence as well?
I would refer you to the White House counsel's office.
And does the White House believe that other former high office holders should now go back and check their personal residences out of an abundance of caution to make sure that they're not holding on to classified documents as well?
That's not something I can comment from here. I don't even know the reasoning of what the news that we heard about Pence. So I'm just not going to comment from here.
For more on this, Robert Costa and Nancy Cordes joins us now. Robert is CBS News' chief election and campaign correspondent. Nancy is our CBS News chief White House correspondent. Thank you both for joining us. Robert, I want to start with you because just 2 weeks ago, you sat down for an interview with the former vice president and asked him about whether he had documents that were classified in his possession. I want to take a listen first.
Are you sure you have no classified material in your own archives?
Our staff reviewed all of the materials in our office and in our residence to ensure that there were no classified materials that left the White House or remained in our possession. And I remain confident that that was done in a thorough and careful way.
Well, that confidence didn't age well, and we know that something prompted him to ask for a search of his residence, of places where he worked. So what can you tell us that you learned today about how this all unfolded?
Weijia, good to be with you, and Nancy here. So chronology is everything when it comes to reporting, and it's important to note that interview took place on January 10th in the Villages in Florida, that conservative retirement community. Pence was out promoting his memoir, So Help Me God. And it came as there was new scrutiny based on the report, first reported by CBS News, about the documents found at President Biden's home, first originally at the Penn Biden Center in D.C., So that's January 10th. A few days later, after that interview, the scrutiny of President Biden's documents continued as documents were discovered at his Wilmington residence. And it's during that period, around January 14th, January 15th, two people familiar with this Pence discovery tell CBS News that Pence told his longtime lawyer based in Indiana, a man named Matt Morgan, who many know as the former general counsel of the Trump 2020 campaign. He said to Matt Morgan, I have 4 boxes of records from the vice presidency in my home in Indiana. Can you just go look through them? And now Pence has written a memoir. He's been looking through his files for a while. So there are more questions about what did he know about what was in these 4 boxes. But what we do know at this point is that he knew there were 4 boxes. He wanted Morgan to go look through them. Morgan did on January 16th. And on January 16th, Morgan saw classified markings on some of these documents, put them in a safe, then alerted another Pence lawyer, Greg Jacobs, to go tell the National Archives. The National Archives ultimately and quickly told the Justice Department, and then the FBI came to Pence's home a few days later to take the documents.
And we know that Pence is fully cooperating, which is something different from obviously what is happening with the former president's investigation. But it's also something that the White House continues to point out that President Biden does, Nancy. And that's why they're saying, you know, the situation with President Biden and former President Trump could not be more different. You asked about the Pence documents we just heard. And even though the White House is not talking about it publicly, I imagine privately, you know, this is kind of a gift, right? A political gift for the president.
We did detect some serious relief behind the scenes, Ouija, when this news broke. You know, this really changes the narrative for this White House now that President Biden is not alone in apparently leaving office, perhaps unknowingly, with a handful of classified documents. Now, they were reluctant to say anything publicly. I was not the only reporter who tried to pull any kind of reaction I could out of the White House press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, today, but she simply would not touch the topic. She referred everyone and every question to the White House counsel's office, as she has been doing for a few days. After the fact, I did get a response from the White House counsel's office to my question that I had put to Karine about whether the White House got any kind of heads up that this was coming. And I was told that no, they found out about it just like the rest of us when the news broke this afternoon.
And Bob, you have impeccable timing because today you also spoke with Indiana Republican Congressman Jim Banks. Let's listen to what he had to say about this.
I don't know a lot about the documents that were found at Mike Pence's home, but it sounds like they were found by someone on his team and they alerted the proper authorities and handled it the right way. That's a lot different than the Department of Justice getting involved and finding the types of documents that they did at Joe Biden's home and at the Biden Center. So I'll withhold judgment further on Mike Pence's situation until we learn more. But again, I know I've met no one in my life with greater integrity than Mike Pence, and I'm sure he's handled this with exactly how he should handle a situation like this. I have no doubt about it.
And Robert, you always have one eye, I know, on 2024 because you'll be covering it so closely. How do you think this will impact the race, if at all? I mean, you're talking about 3 candidates now for president who have all somehow mishandled classified materials that ended up somewhere they were not supposed to be.
What's notable is that the political fallout among Republicans has been pretty minimal today. You see Jim Banks, a fellow Indiana Republican like Pence, an ally of former President Trump. He is saying he believes Pence has integrity. You don't see any kind of criticism from most congressional Republicans at this point. And you also saw a statement today from former President Trump saying, leave Mike Pence alone. Yeah. And that's not always the tack he has taken with his former vice president, especially after January 6th. And so what you're seeing from Pence, though, is a very much a wait-and-see moment politically. He is not moving toward a 2024 announcement anytime soon. He's like a lot of these contenders who are giving themselves a spring, even summer, fall timeline to make a final decision. So for Pence, it's not like this is coming just before a planned announcement. Any announcement, if it ever happens with Pence, would likely be later in the spring or in the summer. So you see him perhaps taking a low profile for the moment.
Nancy, that's not the case with President Biden, who we know was going to announce his re-election campaign sometime in the new year. You reported that he plans to do that sometime after the State of the Union on February 7th. And it's pretty clear to me in the White House that they don't see this as a political problem for them. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think that they know that it is certainly crowding out other messages right now, and they've taken a lot of lumps for failing to be more transparent sooner. But they would say that they're playing the long game and that the election is a couple of years away, and there are about 1,000 news cycles between now and then. Certainly the fact that they can now say that, look, this probably happens to a lot of people. It It appears to have happened to former Vice President Pence, too. Certainly that takes a little bit of the heat off of them. And the reality is that the president has to make it official at some point that he is running for re-election. At first, we were getting word that it might happen late last year, and then it floated to this year. Now it looks like perhaps February at the earliest. At some point, he is going to have to make official what we've known for a long time from aides and from the president himself, which is that he intends to run for re-election, particularly if you've got other individuals like former President Trump, but also you've got other people trying to, get out there and raise their profile, like Pence, like a former Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo. They're circling around a run as well. So at some point, the White House is going to have to make it official.
And I wonder how many of those people are now asking their lawyers to look through their boxes. Nancy Cordes and Robert Costa, thank you both.
You're welcome.
A Georgia judge ruled today that a special grand jury's report investigating possible interference by then-President Trump and his allies into the 2020 election will not be released for now. Fulton County Superior Court Judge Robert McBurney has been hearing arguments from prosecutors and news outlets before deciding whether he will release the report. A final decision will be made after the judge reviews each party's arguments. He also said he expects this decision will be appealed. The report is believed to contain recommendations for possible criminal prosecution by Fulton County District Attorney Fannie Willis. The gun control debate is back at the forefront after another wave of shootings in the U.S. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker discusses stalled action in his own state after the break. You're streaming Red and Blue, reporting across the political divide.
Original documentary from CBS reports tensions rising between a powerful country and a vital island.
The supply of this technology came grinding to a halt. The world would grind to a halt.
Absolutely. As Taiwan faces threats and aggression,
Taiwan is on the front line, and we understand our responsibility as a democracy. We cannot fall.
CBS News examines whether they can defend themselves.
Putin, Ukraine, China, Taiwan, there are manifestations of the battle between autocracy and democracy. And that is a fight that we're all engaged in.
Defending Taiwan, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
When weather turns extreme,
States from the plains to the northeast are bracing for more than 2 feet of heavy snow.
every second counts.
This is a monster winter storm.
CBS News and the Weather Channel bring you virtual weather technology so advanced, so real.
There's a wrinkle in the forecast, the accumulating ice.
You'll have time to get prepared.
Take precautions before you head out.
Feel the forecast on the CBS Evening News with Nora O'Donnell.
Stories that inform.
You can be really old at 60, and you can be really young at 85.
Inspire.
How do we unlock the power within ourselves to be who we want to be?
And brighten your day.
The best part of fame is making people feel good. Always send the people home happy.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
An original documentary from CBS reports.
The carnage in our nation's schools has become painfully repetitive.
Not one more child!
School shootings have parents fighting mad.
I promised my daughter I was going to fight. This is going to keep on happening.
And teachers taking lessons in how to fight back.
This is an exercise.
We approach it as it's you or them.
It shouldn't have to be your teacher's job to protect your life.
But will the battle over gun control
People are afraid that they're going to lose their gun rights altogether.
be the hardest lesson of all?
The exercise, you're having to shoot at an adult. Are you prepared to have to kill one of your students?
Guns in the Classroom, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Welcome back to Red and Blue. I'm Weijia Jiang. Deadly mass shootings across the nation are reinvigorating lawmakers' calls for gun reform. In Illinois, new legislation banning certain firearms and high-capacity magazines has been temporarily put on hold. The law, signed earlier this month, faces several legal challenges from gun rights advocates and Republican-led counties. Just today, the National Rifle Association said it's also filing suit against the new law in partnership with other gun rights organizations. My colleague Ed O'Keefe spoke with Democratic Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker about the new gun bill he signed and his expectations for the 2024 presidential election. Here's part of that conversation.
What assures you that getting this big piece of legislation passed, as your first big one in the second term, will prevent gun-related crime, will prevent mass shootings like this from happening in the land of Lincoln?
Well, let's recognize that there is always a lot of talk about, we need to pass some gun safety legislation after these major mass shootings. And there is a great deal of investment that we've, over the last 2 years, made in crime prevention, that is in violence prevention on the streets, lots of programs to put kids to work during the summers and so on. So we're doing quite a lot. What makes me think that we're going to have a diminution of crime in our state is we're doing all of those things. You can't just do one. Assault weapons ban all by itself doesn't have the desired effect of truly reducing gun violence by a significant amount. It's important. It's one component. But you've got to do all these things. Now, Republicans talk an awful lot about mental health and say what we really need to do is not pass assault weapons bans, but really we need mental health treatment. But they voted against it every time in our state. And we've made significant strides in mental health treatment. So, they're hypocrites. They talk a lot about that, mainly because they don't want to talk about the fact that if you had an assault weapons ban in place, it really does reduce the number of shootings. We saw that nationally. And, for 10 years, we had an assault weapons ban in the United States, and you saw the number of shootings go way down. So we anticipate that will happen here.
But it seems that Gavin Newsom or Kathy Hochul get all the ink about the kind of work they've either done or are trying to do. You sitting there in Springfield must get a little grated by the fact that they get all this attention, and yet you and some of these other Democrats in the Midwest are actually getting this stuff done.
The Democratic governors are getting it done across the nation, and I'm very proud of what we're doing here in the Midwest. As you know, over the last 4 years, we raised the minimum wage to $15 an hour. We legalized cannabis and expunged the arrest records and conviction records of people with low-level cannabis convictions. We significantly increased college scholarships, made college much more affordable in our state, and we expanded childcare access and preschool. So, these are Democratic priorities that matter to me. And that, you talked about protecting reproductive rights and reducing shootings. Those all seem like things that the vast majority of people in the United States support, and here in Illinois. For anybody who's been around long enough to remember the 1996 Democratic Convention here in Chicago, really, I've been to almost every convention during my adult lifetime. It was the best convention that Democrats have ever had. So I'm looking forward to putting on the best convention again and renominating Joe Biden.
If he calls you and says, as he's contemplating his reelection, Governor, how should I be characterizing what I've done, and how should I be selling myself to voters now going into 2024? What would you tell him?
He needs to make sure that people remember who he is. This is a person with great empathy. And I think he demonstrated not only that empathy, but the ability to get things done in the worst crisis, perhaps in all of our lifetimes. Also, think about the challenge of the Congress that he got, where, 50-50 Senate, a very close House, and managed to get massive pieces of legislation that really lifted the economy out of recession in a very short period of time. So, that's not a small thing to brag about when you're running for reelection. And 3 or 4 or 5 major pieces of legislation that came through, despite the fact that he had very slim majorities. In fact, one thing that came through is he works across the aisle. Right. This is a guy who served in the United States Senate and worked across the aisle when he was in the Senate. And now he's doing it as president. He proves that having experience doing that and having the respect of people on the other side of the aisle, being able to sit down in a room and really hammer out a deal, that's something that you need in these very turbulent, difficult times where the nation seems divided. This is a guy who brings people together.
CBS News senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe joins me here in D.C. with more. Ed, this law could be a model, right, for what Congress could do if successful. So tell us what it will do to get assault rifles off the streets.
It essentially targets the various tools that can be added to semi-automatic weapons to basically make them automatic. It restricts the size of the ammunition clips that can be attached to weapons, and in fact would have banned the one that was used in that shooting last 4th of July in Highland Park, Illinois, which was part of the reason why they were passing this law to begin with. It also intensifies or expands the use of those so-called red flag laws that allow judges to deem people dangerous and keep weapons away from them. Governor argues this is all legal, this is all within the scope of current Supreme Court precedent. He's ultimately convinced that it will prevail. What happens in Illinois, and part of why he's willing to do this and to deal with the legal fight, is big city Chicago, state legislature run by Democrats, the rest of the state with more than 100 counties, rural and Republican. And they're the ones that are filing suit. Some sheriffs have said they don't want to enforce this. He says, bring it on. Ultimately, he's convinced it'll prevail. Of course, there was a Supreme Court decision regarding New York's gun law. There have been attempts in other states that have been peeled back by the Supreme Court or by federal courts. We'll see where it goes. But it's a good example also for anyone who's like, something needs to be done. Well, here's somebody who's doing it with a Democratic legislature, plowing through, believing that despite the legal challenges, it will prevail. And he argues it's a good model for other states.
Well, it also shows that, it's not just Congress that can do something, which, President Biden once again is calling on lawmakers to pass a similar kind of bill here. He said today, get it on my desk as soon as possible, but let's level set, right? Because we hear this every time there are mass shootings. So what challenges are going to make that pretty much impossible?
For one thing, you have a handful of Democratic senators running in 2024 in predominantly Republican states who may or may not be willing to support legislation that would further restrict the use of assault-style or military-style firearms. Joe Manchin, John Tester, Sherrod Brown come to mind as the kind that certainly would be on the bubble. And look at the legislation that passed last summer in the Senate regarding gun crimes and gun control. 65 senators voted for it, 15 Republicans joining all the Democrats. Of those 15, 4 have retired. So that brings you down to a total of 61 senators who would support at least that legislation that was passed. What's the magic sauce that could get 61 senators? And you need at least 60, remember, to break the filibuster? It's hard. Yeah. And so that math, plus the fact that there are a handful of Democrats who are going to be skittish about this because of the politics of their states, means it's going to be really hard. The Feinstein federal assault weapons ban gets reintroduced every 2 years, and Biden always expresses his support for it. That's the goal. But the reality right now is it wouldn't get through the Senate, certainly wouldn't get a chance in the House.
You also asked the governor about 2024, which is interesting because huge if, for some reason, President Biden does not end up running, even though that is his intention, he is one of the Democrats who has been on the list of potential candidates.
And the reason is he's a big state blue governor. He's a multi-billionaire who can self-finance his own statewide elections, so he could conceivably cut himself a check to launch a presidential campaign. He made very clear he's not interested. I did. Made very clear he's not interested in that. He wants to serve out his full 4 years. But, as we say, if the if the president for some reason doesn't run, he'd be on the list of people. And he wants, and his team, I think more notably, wants him in the conversation. There's this feeling among Midwestern Democratic governors, Gretchen Whitmer, Tony Evers in Wisconsin, Pritzker, Pryor up in Minnesota, that they're doing a lot of the things that Democrats want done, but they don't get nearly as much attention as Gavin Newsom in California.
Well, I was just going to say, yet another reason why he's annoyed by all the attention that Governor Newsom gets.
Exactly.
Right. Thank you, Ed O'Keefe. Appreciate it. Bad blood on Capitol Hill today. Up next, why senators say Ticketmaster is now out of the woods for Taylor Swift ticket sale fiasco last year. When we come back, you're streaming Red and Blue. I see what you did there.
An original CBS Reports documentary.
Yoga and wellness has become a place of anti-science.
Online clickbait.
The algorithms feed you content based upon your own fantasy.
Potentially at my peril.
There's no question about it.
Spreading digital disinformation.
Their entire yoga studio and spiritual community got so embedded in all of the QAnon stuff that it became this sick place.
Why pro-health people are fertile ground for anti-science messages.
We can just go into the whole mask thing. A lot of us just believe that's symbolism for silencing people.
People are locked in this mindset. They've been taught to accept what the medical doctors say.
No longer are you going to be willing to take any medical advice.
It's a big problem that we urgently need to address.
An original CBS Reports documentary streaming now. An original CBS Reports documentary.
We need to put an end to this territorial status.
Will statehood create a better Puerto Rico?
So that we have the same quality of life that you see in the States.
What do you worry about?
Me living here in the future?
They're giving incentives to non-Puerto Ricans to come to Puerto Rico
and extract our natural resources and take over our land.
Vacation in Puerto Rico, and in exchange for that, you don't pay taxes.
Why would I allow somebody who abused me for 123 years to then consume me?
An original CBS Reports documentary streaming now. People from every corner of America facing challenges.
Everyone is just looking for some type of connection.
Just raise your hand and say, hey, I'd like to help.
Coming together to find solutions.
We are going to do something about it.
Their stories are our stories.
Welcome to Eye on America.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
After decades in the public eye and public service, this mother-daughter duo is now talking about gutsy women. What's the gutsiest thing you've ever done? We go person to person with Secretary Hillary Rodham Clinton and Chelsea Clinton.
Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform, inspire, and brighten your day.
The best part of fame is making people feel good.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
Welcome back to Red and Blue. I'm Weijia Jiang. The Senate Judiciary Committee today grilled the president of Live Nation, the parent company of Ticketmaster, about the lack of competition in the ticketing industry. Ticketmaster is accused of botching that pre-sale of tickets for Taylor Swift's upcoming Eras Tour. As a result, ticket sales for the general public were canceled, dropping the glass heart of Swifties nationwide. And Swift fans aren't just getting sad, they want to get even. Live Nation argues, don't blame me. They're saying the issue was caused by bots.
The recent on-sale experience with Taylor Swift, one of the world's most popular artists, has highlighted the need to address these issues urgently. We knew bots would attack that on-sale and planned accordingly. We were then hit with 3 times the amount of bot traffic that we'd ever experienced. And for the first time in 400 verified fan on-sales, they came after our verified fan password servers as well.
Most Taylor Swift fans who lost out on concert tickets really just wanted executives to say, I'm the problem, it's me. And so did senators who came together in a rare bipartisan moment to question whether Live Nation and Ticketmaster act as a monopoly. That does it for today. You can stream Red and Blue Monday to Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern. A reminder, if you want to watch previous episodes of the program, you can see them too, anytime on the CBS News website. Just head over to cbsnews.com/red and blue.
Everybody wakes up in the morning and they are pelted with alerts that frighten them, news that agitates them. With this show, we have the time to explain what's going on. These migrants, they've been released. Explain the status that allows them to be released, to slow things down a little bit. What are the big sets of questions for China and its ambitions? Hackers are stepping up their attacks to extort victims. Let's start with easy. Who's attacking? Here's a deeper understanding of what's happening.
Prime Time with John Dickerson. Stream on the free CBS News app.
You ready?
A generation of kids opens up on CBS Reports.
I just want to be like a regular kid.
Their world, their struggles, their voices.
What if I was white?
A lot of people like to call names and make you feel ashamed for being proud of who you are.
Now streaming Gender.
I did not realize that you could change your gender.
Realizing how you feel.
You can be a boy, sometimes you feel like a girl, sometimes you feel like both.
Redefining who you are.
Identify as trans.
Gender fluid.
Non-binary and queer.
Is the idea of gender a thing of the past?
And to be yourself, always, no matter what anyone says, I love you.
Are the kids all right? Gender. Now streaming on the free CBS